Welcome all to the second lecture of Postmodernism series. In my last lecture, I have spoken about the points of coincidence of modernism and postmodernism and have pointed at the basic points of difference. In today's video, I'll help you understand postmodernism better by differentiating the background between the two and will finally point out the distinct features of postmodernism. Let's begin first with a brief understanding of the background of modernism. With Enlightenment philosophy entering into the world of ideas in Europe during the 17th and 18th century, what happened is reason became important. Kant, as for instance, in his 1784 essay, answering the question, "What is enlightenment?" writes that the motto of enlightenment is "dare to know." And this reason is the key word of modernism. Modernism believes in universality of reason. So from here it can be said that modernism believes in stableness, in binaries and in structures. Here in the screen, you can see an image of a tree. Modernism is like the tree which has a definite structure, fixed origin and predictability which is similar to the working of reason. But postmodernism is more like this rhizome that you can see now in the screen. Can you define its growth? No. Can you predict its growth? No. So this rhizome resists rational structuralization and definition. Postmodernism, in a similar vein, rejects the doctrine of unity of reason. Rather, it is suspicious of reason. So as I said in my last video, destructuring is accepted in an optimistic note by postmodernism, unlike modernism. A modernist outlook will look onto the postmodernity of our existence, where postmodernity stands for the changed economic or cultural state of our present society, as for instance binge watching or orange flavor juice sold as orange juice in canned bottles, not as something acceptable, unlike postmodernism. We'll look onto postmodernism more deeply in this video later, but for the time being, let's understand the background that brought about this change. Understanding the background will help us put things in place and will clarify all our doubts regarding postmodernism. Of all the reasons, I'll speak briefly about three philosophical developments that paved the way for postmodernism. The first development was in the field of psychology. Lacan, in the Four Fundamental Concepts of Psychoanalysis published in 1964, speaks about desire, which brings to the forefront the split between conscious and unconscious. Lacan writes, "The unconscious is the discourse of the other, which implies that our desires are never only ours and hence we are not even in control of our own desires." From here, what we can deduce is the split or fragmentation that is right within us, and hence any claim of homogeneity, defined structure and even reason is not valid. Foucault's 1977 article Niche Genealogy History can be considered as another turning point. Foucault's genealogical theory of history, as explained in this article, replaces the conventional linear model of knowledge with a more diverse, pluralistic model. Let me explain this for you a bit. Foucault describes genealogy as a particular investigation into those elements which we tend to feel are without history. Such an investigation shows contradictory past, power, politics, and in the process points at the power knowledge operation and also at the unreliability of truth. Say for instance, if we talk about madness, we find Foucault in his Madness and Civilization is pointing towards the working of power which is creating knowledge so as to facilitate the exclusion of the insane only after the dawn of the age of reason. Before that, during Renaissance period, insane people were portrayed in art as possessing wisdom, whereas literature portrayed the insane as people who are able enough to reveal the distinction between what men are and what men pretend to be. It was only in the age of reason, that is, during the 17th century, when confinement and exclusion of insane people began with other antisocial people like prostitutes, vagrants, blasphemers, which hence on one hand shows the distinction between sanity and insanity as a social construct, and on the other hand points at the othering coming out of power and knowledge also. Thus, Foucault shows that the working of reason as unreason through his theses. The third person about whom I'll be speaking is the French philosopher Derrida. The semiotic analysis known as deconstruction that came from him changed the scenario altogether. With his deconstruction thesis, he disrupted the illusion of priority, which tends to collect around one term in any binary opposition. According to Derrida, metaphysics of presence creates marked or hierarchized binary opposition that have an effect on everything from our conception of speech's relation to writing to our understanding of racial differences and also to our understanding of gender. So, now here on screen you can see what is meant by the metaphysics of presence. It is the tendency to conceive fundamental philosophical concepts such as reality, truth, and being in terms of ideas such as presence, essence, identity, and origin, and in the process to ignore the crucial role of absence and differences. So, differing from this metaphysics of presence, with deconstruction he attempts to expose or undermine such a metaphysical understanding. He speaks of undecidability of differences. Let me clarify this better in context of gender. Say for instance, we see a girl and say she's a girl. We do this based on the biological sign, which is a presence, and we are defining the being, negating all the other undecidable and unrecognized elements which is a part of a being. Thus, in doing so, what we are doing is, we are constructing an identity out of gender as biological presences and negating many others in the process. Many other aspects, many other elements of our identity in the process. Secondly, let's take for instance, for example, sexual orientation. Sexual orientation other than heterosexual actually problematizes the entire gender narrative. Because according to the gender narrative, you ought to behave like a male or like a female even in your sexual relationships. So when, say for instance, we are talking about transgender, what is happening is the gender norms are broken, and this is problematizing the metaphysics of presence thesis. Thus, the undecidability or the in-betweenness that Derrida speaks about is evident in the aforementioned reflection, and this type of understanding is a product of Derridian deconstruction. So you can well understand that such a philosophical background facilitated a more open, restrictionless understanding of life, of things, and also of identity. It also led to a realization of power's connection with both knowledge and hierarchy. And thus, from such a theoretical background emerged postmodernism, which along with its suspicion of reason, refused to consider humanity as a unitary subject striving towards the goal of perfect coherence. And thus, postmodernism rejected modernism and reason. So now it's time to sum up the features of postmodernism. Postmodernism comes with a rejection of all encompassing rationality, rejection of a totalizing pattern and hence challenging totalizing discourses. It also comes with a mistrust towards meta-narratives and emergence of micro-narratives, and it is also suspicious of the notion of humans possessing an undivided and coherent self. Finally, I'd like to end today's video with a definition of postmodernism. Postmodernism is a knowing modernism, a self-reflexive modernism, a modernism that does not agonize about itself. Postmodernism does what modernism does only in a celebratory rather than repentant way? Does, instead of lamenting the loss of the past, the fragmentation of existence and the collapse of selfhood, postmodernism embraces these characteristics as a new form of social existence and behavior. So that's all for today. Thank you all for joining me.